In North Korea, a veil of secrecy conceals a punitive system infamous for its extreme severity and brutality. From public executions to torture, here are 10 of the most alarming punishments reported in North Korea. Number 10. Public executions. Public executions in North Korea have become notorious for their gruesome and chilling characteristics. And although these reports come primarily from defectors and are difficult to verify independently, they consistently paint a deeply disturbing picture. These executions serve a dual purpose in the North Korean regime. They are the most severe form of punishment for the accused and a gruesome public spectacle deliberately created to instill fear and maintain tight social control. What distinguishes North Korean public executions is the wide variety of offenses that can lead to this extreme punishment. These offenses can vary significantly from acts that most nations would consider serious crimes, such as petty theft or espionage, to actions that democracies might consider minor or even lawful, such as consuming foreign media or attempting to defect. The arbitrary nature of the offenses that warrant such severe punishments underscores the extreme measures the regime is willing to take to assert its dominance. The way in which public executions are typically carried out further highlights the regime's brutal control. These executions often lack any semblance of a fair trial. In many cases, the accused are denied legal representation, and the sentences appear predetermined. The executions themselves frequently take place before large crowds, sometimes including relatives of the accused and even children. Public attendance is often coerced, and failure to show sufficient enthusiasm or attendance carries the threat of punishment. The choice of locations for these public executions is also significant. These executions are deliberately chosen to be symbolic and often take place in markets, school grounds, or near riverbanks to maximize visibility and impact. The regime's intention is to etch the horror into the minds of as many people as possible, creating a collective memory that serves as a powerful deterrent against future crimes. Despite flagrant violations of international human rights law, which unequivocally condemns extrajudicial killings, public executions without due process persist in North Korea. However, the hermetic and isolated nature of the North Korean regime poses significant challenges for international organizations seeking to take effective action against these reported abuses. In short, public executions in North Korea are the epitome of a gruesome, almost theatrical means of control, in which the cost of any perceived disloyalty is exacted in the most extreme and horrifying way imaginable. The primary objective is to keep the population in a perpetual state of fear and subservience, brandishing the specter of this ultimate punishment as a chilling cautionary tale for all to behold. These acts represent a chilling facet of the North Korean regime's oppressive tactics, leaving a lasting impact on the collective psyche of its citizens. Number 9. Collective punishment and guilt by association. In North Korea, the principle of collective punishment is a draconian practice that goes beyond the conventional penal system. When an individual is accused of a crime or disloyalty, their punishment is not limited to their own actions. Rather, it encompasses their entire family, and sometimes even distant relatives. This approach reflects the regime's relentless determination to crush any form of dissent and exert total control over its population. The logic underlying this system is to instill a pervasive fear that transcends individual behavior. The regime wants its citizens to understand that their actions can have grave consequences, not only for themselves, but also for their loved ones. Not only for themselves, but also for their loved ones. This understanding deeply discourages individuals from speaking out against the government or challenging it in any way. This fear permeates society, affecting social circles and friendships, and isolating potential dissidents. It fosters an environment where self-censorship becomes the norm, as people are afraid to express their opinions or grievances. The families of the accused often suffer the harshest consequences. They may be subjected to punitive measures, such as forced relocation, to prison camps or remote, impoverished areas. In these places, they endure grueling labor, severe restrictions on their freedom, and a life marked by social stigma. In the most extreme cases, the execution of family members has been reported. However, independently verifying these allegations is extremely difficult, given the secrecy of the North Korean regime. This system is designed not only to punish, but also to permanently brand families as untrustworthy. It has a lasting impact that affects several generations. Children born into these families face a bleak future, as they are often marginalized from society and have their educational and employment opportunities severely limited. This cycle of punishment establishes a powerful deterrent, reinforcing the regime's control over its citizens for generations. It should be noted that the practice of collective punishment is widely condemned by international human rights law, including the Geneva Conventions. These laws explicitly prohibit punishing individuals for actions they did not personally commit. Despite international condemnation, North Korea continues to employ this practice, seemingly protected by its isolation and the limited capacity of the international community to intervene. In essence, collective punishment and guilt by association in North Korea serve to exacerbate the already severe system of punishments in place. By holding families and communities collectively responsible for the actions of individuals, the regime instills widespread fear that extends beyond the walls of prisons and labor camps, consolidating its control over all facets of life in North Korea. This is a chilling and disturbing aspect of the regime that continues to raise international concern and scrutiny. Number 8. Forced labor. The problem of forced labor in North Korea is widespread and terribly brutal, with significant repercussions on the lives of many people. Numerous credible reports have shed light on the stark reality faced by tens of thousands of North Koreans, both political prisoners and ordinary citizens, trapped in this oppressive system. They are forced to work in a variety of settings, encompassing not only infamous labor camps like Kwanliso, but also state-controlled farms and factories. For the North Korean regime, this system serves a dual purpose. It provides essentially free labor, while simultaneously acting as a powerful tool for exerting social and political control. Conditions in these infamous labor camps are deplorable. Detainees are forced to perform grueling work for long hours in harsh and often dangerous environments, such as mines, logging operations, and agricultural fields. The physical demands of this work are compounded by minimal safety precautions, resulting in an alarmingly high number of work-related injuries and deaths. To make matters worse, malnutrition is rampant, and access to adequate medical care is extremely limited, making survival a daily struggle for many detainees. These labor camps also function as places of ideological re-education, where prisoners are subjected to intense training sessions that emphasize unwavering loyalty to the regime while ruthlessly punishing any form of dissent. In addition to physical hardship, psychological torment is a constant companion in the lives of the detainees. They live under the ever-watchful eye of surveillance and in perpetual fear of further punishment. However, forced labor is not confined to the walls of the prison camps. Even ordinary North Koreans can be conscripted into various forms of mandatory labor. For example, during the agricultural season, citizens are often forced to volunteer on farming projects. Similarly, urban residents may be mobilized for construction projects or other manual labor as part of their socialist obligations. Failure to comply with these obligations can result in punishments ranging from fines to public humiliation or even imprisonment. Forced labor in North Korea serves multiple functions for the regime. It acts as a tool of punishment, inflicting severe physical and psychological suffering on those subjected to it. Furthermore, it serves as a means of ideological indoctrination, reinforcing loyalty to the regime and suppressing dissent. In addition, it represents a valuable economic resource, as the regime benefits from the labor of its citizens without any consideration for their well-being. To provide them with any remuneration, the system is intentionally designed to dehumanize and break the spirit of those subjected to it, thereby stifling any form of dissent and perpetuating the regime's iron grip on power. The harrowing stories and well-documented reports coming out of North Korea about forced labor paint a grim picture of a system that systematically disregards basic human dignity and rights in its relentless pursuit of absolute control. This issue underscores the urgent need for international attention and concerted action to address these grave human rights violations that continue to afflict countless people in North Korea. If you're enjoying these interesting facts, subscribe now so you don't miss any new videos. Number 7. Starvation as a form of punishment. Starvation, whether intentionally inflicted or resulting from systemic failures, stands as another deeply disturbing form of punishment that has come to the forefront in the context of North Korea. While food shortages affect much of the North Korean population due to economic sanctions, mismanagement, and environmental problems, they take on a deliberate and sinister character within the confines of prisons, labor camps, and detention centers. In these environments, food deprivation is employed as a calculated method to systematically weaken prisoners, both physically and psychologically. Reports from defectors and human rights organizations have shed a revealing light on the extreme malnutrition prevalent in North Korean prison camps and detention centers. When meals are offered, they are often so meager as to be barely sufficient to sustain life. Descriptions of a meal might range from a mere handful of cornmeal to watery soup with minimal nutritional value. This intentional undernourishment exacerbates the physical strain imposed by forced labor, creating a cruel cycle of deteriorating health, diminished work capacity, and consequently, even harsher punishments. This brutal tactic serves multiple purposes. First, it weakens the individual to the point where resistance, whether physical or psychological, becomes almost impossible. Second, the act of depriving people of food serves to dehumanize them, reducing them to a state where the primal struggle for survival overshadows all other concerns, including the ability to descend or any escape plan. Beyond prison walls, the specter of starvation is wielded as a tool of obedience and control. Citizens often face food deprivation as punishment for failing to meet state-imposed work quotas or for engaging in activities deemed illegal by the government, such as black market trading. Even in these contexts, food scarcity becomes a tool of state control, as the government controls granaries, which can be opened or closed to reward loyalty or punish disobedience. The deliberate use of starvation as a form of punishment flagrantly violates numerous international human rights standards, most notably the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which expressly recognizes the right to adequate food. Despite strong international condemnation of this cruel practice, it has not diminished, and is clear evidence of the extreme measures the North Korean regime is willing to employ to maintain its grip on power. This issue underscores the urgent need for the international community to address the grave human rights abuses occurring in North Korea and advocate for the well-being of its citizens. Number 6. Harsh punishments. The North Korean regime, targeting defectors and human rights organizations, employs an extraordinarily harsh mechanism deliberately designed to suppress any form of dissent and maintain an unyielding grip on the population. These punishments are not limited to actions that would be considered serious in other parts of the world. They also extend to offenses specifically defined by the regime's strict regulations regarding information, movement, and freedom of expression. Among the most draconian forms of punishment known to have occurred in North Korea are public executions, which serve as gruesome displays of state power. These executions, usually carried out by firing squads, are often conducted in public places to instill fear in the local population. The reasons for these executions can range from charges of treason and espionage to less serious offenses such as smuggling or consuming foreign media. Public executions serve as a stark reminder to the population of the potential consequences of challenging the regime. Another grim aspect of punishment is long-term imprisonment in labor camps, often referred to as keys. Conditions in these camps are appalling, with inmates subjected to forced labor in dangerous environments. Malnutrition, lack of medical care, and physical abuse are rampant, and sadly, many prisoners do not survive their sentences, succumbing to the harsh conditions or facing execution. These camps function not only as a means of punishment, but also as a formidable warning. The fear of being sent to a labor camp is employed as a method of social control. Corporal punishment represents another method, or employed by the authorities, with techniques ranging from severe beatings to waterboarding and stress positions designed to inflict both physical and psychological harm. In some cases, the accused's family members may also suffer collective punishments, whereby relatives, including children, may be sent to labor camps. This is based on the principle of guilt by association. Furthermore, repatriation to North Korea typically carries severe punishments for defectors. Those who attempt to flee the country or are forcibly returned after escaping face interrogation, torture, and often prolonged imprisonment. This serves both as punishment for the individual and as a deterrent to others considering leaving the country. In short, the North Korean regime employs these severe punishments as instruments to maintain its totalitarian rule. The primary objective is to cultivate an atmosphere of fear that discourages any inclination toward dissent or deviation from state-backed norms. Although these accounts rely heavily on testimonies that are difficult to independently verify, the sheer number and consistency of such reports paint a deeply troubling picture of the human rights situation in North Korea. If this video is making you more curious about the world, give it a like or a thumbs up. Let's continue. Number 5. Denial of medical care as punishment. In North Korea, the complete lack of access to adequate medical care stands as a deeply troubling form of punishment, often intertwined with other serious abuses such as forced labor and torture. In the country's prison camps, labor camp, and detention centers, medical care is shockingly inadequate and frequently denied, further exacerbating the suffering of detainees. Reports from defectors and findings by human rights organizations shed light on a calamitous situation. Prisoners suffering from work-related injuries, malnutrition, or illness have virtually no access to medical services or essential medicines. Even in cases of serious illness or injury, prisoners are often forced to perform arduous and continuous labor, further worsening their condition and accelerating their deterioration. The deliberate denial of medical treatment serves multiple sinister purposes within the punitive regime. First, it functions as a form of psychological torture. The awareness that illnesses or injuries will go untreated adds another layer of terror to an already nightmarish experience. Second, the absence of medical care can act as a death sentence, a method of eliminating prisoners without the overt act of execution. From the regime's perspective, this approach consumes fewer resources than keeping prisoners alive outside the penal system. The denial of medical care is not limited to inmates within the prison system. It also extends to ordinary citizens who violate the regime in various ways. For example, people who fail to meet work quotas, criticize the government, or engage in actions deemed disloyal may find themselves or their families denied access to medical services. In a country where the capacity of state-run medical facilities is already limited, this can translate into severe and potentially fatal punishment. The deliberate denial of medical care is a brutal instrument of punishment and control in North Korea. By intentionally depriving prisoners and dissidents of essential medical services, the regime fosters a culture of fear and submission in which even the most fundamental human rights are systematically violated. This form of punishment not only inflicts immediate suffering, but also leaves lasting physical and psychological scars on those who endure it. It underscores the lengths to which the North Korean regime is willing to go to maintain its iron grip on power. Number 4. Surveillance and psychological control. In North Korea, the machinery of punishment extends far beyond mere physical suffering. It encompasses an intricate system of surveillance and psychological manipulation that exerts profound control over the population. Beyond conventional punitive methods, this extensive surveillance apparatus serves two main functions: as a preventative measure and as a psychological tool that fosters self-censorship, encourages distrust among citizens, and cultivates a climate of pervasive fear. Surveillance in North Korea leaves no aspect of life untouched, from public spaces to the privacy of the home. The regime employs a variety of tactics, from human informants strategically placed within communities to advanced technological methods. Neighborhoods are meticulously organized into units responsible for monitoring the behavior of their members, creating an environment in which individuals are subject to constant peer scrutiny. Even minor infractions can be swiftly reported to the authorities, potentially leading to punishments ranging from public humiliation to imprisonment. The psychological impact of this omnipresent surveillance is profound. People live in a state of constant fear, always aware of the possibility that they are being watched. This heightened surveillance makes individuals extremely cautious about what they say, who they associate with, and even their most intimate thoughts. This culture of surveillance permeates family and friendship relationships, sowing distrust in the very social bonds that usually provide emotional and psychological support. Furthermore, the regime employs more direct forms of psychological control. Public shaming sessions, often called self-criticism sessions, are commonplace. In these sessions, individuals are coerced into confessing their perceived shortcomings and criticizing others. These sessions serve both as a means of inducing fear and conformity, acting as a tactic of public humiliation and as a constant reminder of the regime's omnipresence in all aspects of daily life. Another facet of psychological control is the relentless propaganda machine that glorifies the regime while vilifying external enemies. This creates a distorted reality in which the state presents itself as the ultimate protector, making it psychologically difficult for people to question or rebel against the status quo. This Orwellian system flagrantly violates numerous international human rights principles, such as the right to privacy and freedom of thought. Yet it remains one of the most effective tools in the North Korean regime's arsenal for maintaining control over its citizens. This underscores the fact that punishment in North Korea is not solely about physical suffering, but also focuses on manipulating the minds of its people, ensuring their compliance through a pervasive culture of fear and surveillance. Number 3. The turtle, among others. The turtle is another deeply disturbing method of punishment that has been systematically documented in North Korea, shedding light on the harrowing experiences of its citizens while simultaneously obtaining precise details about the specific turtle techniques and their prevalence is challenging due to the country's secretive nature. The accounts of defectors and the findings of human rights organizations offer a sobering perspective. Torture serves multiple purposes in North Korea, acting not only as a means of punishment, but also as a method of interrogation and a tool for suppressing political dissent. Physical torture encompasses a range of methods explicitly designed to inflict extreme pain and physical harm. Beatings are alarmingly common and are often administered using various instruments, including wooden rods, metal sticks, and electric batons. Other methods include waterboarding and tension positions, which force individuals to maintain unbearable postures for extended periods. However, torture transcends mere physical suffering. Psychological methods are also ruthlessly employed to break the mental state of victims. Sleep deprivation, forced participation in public humiliation sessions, and threats of harm to loved ones are among the psychological endurance techniques that have been used in many cases. The goal is not only to extract information, but also to instill such a deep level of fear that the victim becomes subdued, less likely to challenge or question the regime in the future. What exacerbates the horror is the lack of due process. Many of the people those subjected to torture have not been formally charged or afforded a fair trial. Confessions obtained through torture are frequently used as evidence in sham trials, further entangling the practice within the judicial process. The lack of legal representation or any form of external oversight renders interrogation chambers lawless spaces where almost anything can happen with impunity. These actions flagrantly violate international human rights statutes, including the Turtle Convention, to which North Korea is a party. However, the country's lack of transparency and isolation make it exceptionally difficult for the international community to intervene or hold the regime accountable. In this particular context, torture evolves being a mere punitive measure. It becomes an instrument for maintaining an atmosphere of fear and submission that the regime considers essential for its own survival. The stories of North Korea's turtle survivors underscore the urgent need for international awareness and action to address these grave human rights violations. Number 2. Frequently cited by defectors, NGOs, and international organizations. They have been consistently brought to light by various sources. These sources primarily include defectors who have managed to escape the regime, non-governmental organizations, human rights NGOs, and international organizations such as the United Nations. Although each of these sources offers a unique perspective, they often converge on the fundamental themes of the extensive control and severe punitive measures employed by the North Korean regime. Defectors' accounts are especially compelling, as they offer first-hand experiences of life inside North Korea. Those who have escaped the regime describe a wide range of punitive measures, from well-known practices such as labor camps and public executions to more subtle forms of psychological torture and indoctrination. Some defectors have even reported witnessing the execution or sentencing to forced labor of family members as part of collective punishments. Although defector accounts can be difficult to independently verify due to North Korea's closed nature, the consistency of their stories collectively paints a compelling picture of widespread abuses. NGOs, including leading international human rights organizations such as Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, have played a crucial role in gathering evidence and publishing reports on human rights abuses in North Korea. These organizations interview defectors, collect satellite imagery of alleged prison camps, and gather information from other open sources to advocate for international action. While NGOs lack the capacity to operate inside North Korea, their rigorous investigative methods and global reputation lend credibility to their findings, making them a vital source of information. International organizations, such as the United Nations, also play a significant role in documenting human rights abuses in North Korea. For example, the United Nations Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea published a comprehensive report in 2014 detailing various forms of abuse, including those that may constitute crimes against humanity. These reports often serve as the basis for sanctions and other diplomatic actions against the North Korean regime. However, international organizations face the challenge of limited access to the country, which restricts their ability to conduct on-the-ground investigations. These organizations often encounter obstacles due to the secretive and isolated nature of the North Korean regime. Nevertheless, the consistency of accounts from various sources raises serious concerns. The recurring nature and similarity of these reports suggest the existence of systemic problems rather than isolated incidents, underscoring the need for international scrutiny and action. Whether it's a defector sharing their personal experiences or an NGO presenting well-documented evidence, each account adds to the harrowing picture of human rights abuses and harsh punishments prevalent in North Korea. Number 1. A report on grave human rights violations. The documentation of human rights violations in North Korea is a distressing narrative that has emerged from various sources, shedding light on the deeply authoritarian nature of the regime under Kim Jong-un's leadership. These accounts collectively reveal a regime that employs strict measures to enforce its laws and maintain its ideological orthodoxy, creating an atmosphere of fear and repression. One of the most damning pieces of evidence of human rights violations in North Korea is a comprehensive report published by a United Nations Commission of Inquiry in 2014. This landmark report meticulously details a wide range of systematic and egregious human rights violations, some of which amount to crimes against humanity. Among the serious practices documented are extrajudicial executions. The report also highlights the appalling conditions in political prison camps, where detainees are subjected to forced labor, inadequate access to food, and medical neglect. Public executions, often carried out without due process, are chilling spectacles designed to instill fear and obedience. Even seemingly innocuous acts, such as watching foreign media or engaging in unauthorized communication with strangers, can have grave consequences, including the death penalty. In the most harrowing cases, women suffer sexual violence and exploitation, including forced labor and ideological indoctrination in schools, conditioning them for a lifetime of unconditional loyalty to the regime. The secrecy of the North Korean regime makes independent verification of information extremely difficult. However, the consistency of these accounts, from diverse sources such as defectors, non-governmental organizations, United Nations agencies, and independent human rights researchers, paints a grim picture of the human rights situation in the country. Addressing these issues on the international stage is complex and delicate, especially with North Korea's nuclear ambitions as a backdrop. Balancing efforts to tackle human rights abuses while simultaneously navigating the intricate diplomatic landscape surrounding the North Korean nuclear program presents a multifaceted challenge for the international community. North Korea's nuclear system upgrade presents a multifaceted challenge for the international community. This underscores the urgent need for careful diplomacy and coordinated international efforts to address both the humanitarian crisis and security issues in the region. See you in the next video.